Welcome to Allies or Enemies. I'm Jess.
And I am Shawn, and this is part 5 of our top 100 favorite board games of all time. And today we are counting down from 60 to 51.
And so far, we haven't had the same game appear in the same section of our lists yet. So we'll see if it happens with this one.
Yeah, it's gotta happen soon, but I think it is my turn to kick it off. Yeah, so let's just hop right into it and go to my number 60. My number 60 is Pulsar 2849, and Pulsar it's a game of a lot of stuff. The main thing that you're doing is dice drafting, but then with those dice, you've got like a tech tree, and you've got these satellite things, and you've got like your own personal board with its own little tech tree, and you've got just traveling around the universe, flying to all these different planets. And there's just some really cool, like, you can kind of see everything that you're doing. Like, I love that you put out these satellites when you're traveling around the galaxy, and there's just these little circles that then you fill in with like the interior of the satellite and how you move up the tech tree and how you fly and leave your little like delicious looking like candies on different planets. All of it, it's like a fairly simple production, but it works so, it just looks like you want it to look.
Yeah, there is a lot going on and a lot of different ways to score points. And the nice thing that I find with it as well is there's a few end game goals. So that could really kind of shift the game a little bit too, depending on what happens at the end.
Yeah, it's nice to have that thing that you're kind of driving towards. Jess really, when she sees a goal, she's going at it. I'm always, I'll do a bit of everything. But that is my number 60.
My number 60 is Azul, and I went with the original. I do love the Summer Pavilion as well, but I also really liked the first one that came out. It is a little bit simpler, but I like that the turns are super quick, and the drafting of the beautiful tiles works great. And with two players, it's a little bit mean at times, or it can be if you look across the way and you can see that they really don't need a bunch of one tiles, and if you can time it just right, you might be able to kind of leave them with a whole bunch of them.
Yeah, this is one of those games that gets meaner the more that you play it. A little bit like Carcassonne, I think, is kind of the same way, or Ticket to Ride as well, where like you said, like you can see she's got nowhere to put blue. There's no way I'm taking those blues. And then all of a sudden you've got like 6 blues that all score you negative points. And that really does become part of the drafting.
And I usually don't love mean games, but you can usually kind of see what might happen ahead of time and try and avoid it a little bit. And it's just, yeah, it looks great. It plays great. This is one I would introduce to family and friends who are playing as well. And that is my number 60.
My number 59 is Sierra West, and I really enjoy the theme here. I love cowboy stuff, and it's great because it's got kind of a mix of cowboy stuff. It's got 4 different modules, so totally different ways to play it. And there's one that's like Apple Dumpling Gang, and there's one that's like canoes going down a river, like a little bit Deliverance, and there's one where you're just shooting each other. So it's great because it kind of is all different aspects of cowboys, and it's just such a different game where it's this deck builder, but also you're like moving a dude up a mountain, and that's how you gain more cards into your deck. And then you're also moving them along trails, which are also the cards. So it's this really cool multi-use card game, and just so different with the different modules.
And it does have an element where you, when it's not your turn, you're able to use your workers to still do actions based on what your opponent is doing as well. So it is nice to kind of always be invested.
Yeah, I like games where I'm always involved. I always want to be the one playing. And this one does a good job of that. And so it is my 59.
My number 59 is Underwater Cities, and this is actually the second Vladimir Suchi on this section because you have Pulsar. And Underwater Cities is a game where you are building an underwater city, but you are doing that by putting out kind of your workers, which are these tokens. And the thing that I like about it is you can sometimes get some really great combinations, because when you put your worker out, if you play a card that matches the section it's going to, you also get to do the action of that card as well. So it's this kind of fun puzzle of trying to figure out, Did you want to do the perfect action but not get a combination, or is there another route you can go?
Yeah, it does have a really cool, because there is kind of a bit of a tableau building. Like, a lot of people compare this to terraforming Mars, but then also that worker placement. But you only have 3 workers, and that is not enough to do the things that you want to do. So you really need to build those combos, which makes it a very tight game, but a good one.
Yeah, it's a very tight engine builder, and that is my number 59.
My number 58 is Dice Hospital, and it took a little while before we picked this up because I was not sure about the theme. Just the idea of running a hospital is like a little bit grim, and it is a little bit grim. The rooms and the nurses, everything's kind of realistic, but it's super fun, and it's really just this puzzle of you've got these dice and you're trying to heal them up. They come in on an ambulance at low numbers. You're trying to build them up till they're a 6, and then once they're a 6, you can finally kind of make them a 7 and send them off into the world. But the interesting thing is that you want to heal everyone like at once. So you want to discharge a whole bunch of patients and squeeze them all out of the door at the same time, which makes it this cool challenge where you're slowly healing a few and you're quickly healing others, and you're trying to time that big like wave of health at the same time.
And then another key part of it is when you draft your dice, you then also have to draft like a specialist or a room. And so all of that leads you to maybe focus on different colors or different combinations that you might need. And so that puzzle aspect, as you figure it out simultaneously, because first the draft happens and then you're both kind of working away on your puzzles, works really well.
Yeah, I like that everyone's playing it at the same time. We already just talked about that, but I really do like that. And this whole thing's happening at the same time. So that is my 58.
My number 58 is Beyond the Sun. And when I first saw what this looked like, I thought it looked a little boring. It looks like it's just a giant tech tree, and it is basically a giant tech tree.
Yeah, it's a giant tech tree.
But I really enjoy playing it because you start off with only having very few actions available. Then depending on what kind of path you go down to research, it opens up more and more actions. So it kind of keeps you reevaluating the board and seeing what you can do throughout the whole game, kind of constantly shifting your strategy a little bit.
Yeah, it's really this cool like emerging worker placement game, and like when Jess was like, "Oh, it's a giant tech tree," I'm like, "Ooh, a giant tech tree! That's exciting!" And then also that sideboard where you're exploring the planets at the same time too. But yeah, I am very excited about this game, and I will talk about it much later in a few videos.
Yeah, I do like the planet aspect. I love collecting a whole bunch of planets, and that's always kind of an option as one of the routes you can do. And that is my number 58.
My number 57 is Civilization: A New Dawn, and I have the older. I know there's a lot of Civilization games, but I have the older kind of main Sid Meier's Civilization board game, and it's great, but it just takes a lot of time. And the video games in there are great too, but they also take a lot of time. So it's really nice to have this. That's just kind of a nice little package. Although I will say, it gets a lot better when you add the expansion, because that then lets you explore, and it adds these different like districts in your city, and it changes how combat works. And I think with the expansion, it hits just the right balance between being kind of the light-ish Civilization game and still a full Civilization game.
And one of the things we weren't sure was how well it would play with 2 players, because most Civilization games often have a military aspect, and this one does. And so for scaling, we weren't certain whether that would work for 2. But because the maps are smaller with 2 players, we found it works great.
Yeah, it really squeezes you in together. Yeah, this is like, it's not a knife fight, I guess, because you got like cannons. This is like an artillery fight in a phone booth. So you're really squished in together. And there's also kind of AI bases that you got to take out too. But that is my number 57.
My number 57 is Istanbul. And every game, you randomize how the tiles come out. So each time your market board could look very different, and so you in it what you have is a stack of assistants, and to be able to perform an action you have to be able to drop off an assistant or pick one up. So the locations of each of those stalls are really key. But what's interesting about it is as people complete some of the tasks and get a ruby, it means the next ruby is just a little bit more expensive. So you can sometimes kind of get in each other's way, where if I have two different ones I can go for. I might take the one that Shawn's going to go for next because it'll be harder for him to get it.
And I love that at first this looks a little bit abstract, but as you play it, you really feel that theme because there's just these little bits like you can like send out like your drunk like cousin to go do stuff for you, but then if the other players come across them, they can just send them back to jail for like causing trouble. And there's just all these just like little bits to it, and how the just how the different market tiles work as well. It does feel like a market as you're moving around it.
Yeah, and with the big box too, we do recommend that because the add-ons just make it feel like a more of a full game. And that is my number 57.
My number 56 is Dwellings of Eldervale. And this is obviously an enormous production. It's got all sorts of plastic in there and all sorts of fancy monsters. But really, the cool thing about this is kind of the different layers of almost worker placement that are going on, because you're building out a map, a modular map that slowly is coming out, and you're putting your workers on there to gather resources. But at the same time, you're getting cards, and you've got a little tableau of cards, and once all your workers are out, you bring them back, and then they also activate on those cards, which also kind of become worker spaces. And so it's this really cool kind of dual layered worker placement game. And I love the asymmetry, and you know what, the production doesn't hurt either. It is nice to have such a like fancy game, although I could live with a bit of a smaller box.
But the worker placement aspect is also interesting because you have to manage a little bit of area control with that, because you're able to claim tiles by turning your workers into houses, which is like the best part, really. But that means you now have one fewer worker to use. So you kind of have to strategize about when to bring out your workers and when you want them to become dwellings.
And the best part about that is that they literally become dwellings. So you put little houses, hats on their heads, and now the person becomes a house, like a transformer. And it looks so cool and it's so fun. And that is my 56.
My number 56 is Glenmore 2 Chronicles, where you are Scottish Highland clans. And the best part that I love about it is that we spent like a whole evening having to sticker all of the meeples to really get the kilts like on right. And I think it really adds to it. But what you're doing is you are going along and you are drafting tiles to put into your land that you're building out. But your clan members are really important because you can only put tiles next to where they're standing, and then where the tiles go, activate all the surrounding ones. So you always kind of have to make the decision of where to put it out and how to activate those to kind of maximize what you're getting and what you're spending.
Yeah, and I love how Scottish it is too. And I don't share Jess's love of stickering, but she was really into our sticker party. But I do love all of the Scottish things. Like they've got a map of Scotland with all of these kind of clan shields on it that's kind of a like side part of the game. And then there's like locks in it, and just that like what all of the meeples look like. And once you got those stickers on them, they do look really cool too. And those chronicles as well, because each one changes the game a bit, and all of them are like, it's like whiskey, and it's like this boat race, and it's all of these things that are very Scottish, and it's really fun.
Yeah, it is great to have the options of introducing different chronicles and playing slightly differently each time almost. And that is my number 56.
My number 55 is Dinosaur World. And Dinosaur World is, of course, it's basically Jurassic Park, the board game. It's kind of Jurassic World, the board game, except that this is good. And Dinosaur World, it's huge. It takes up, like, we've got a big dining room table. It takes up the entirety of it. I don't even know how we play with 3 or 4 players, but there's a lot of fun in that because it is a dinosaur game. You want it to be huge. And in this one, the thing that kind of ups it from Dinosaur Island is you're actually building out your park. And so you're adding these tiles, and then you're driving a Jeep around it, and people are getting killed, and dinosaurs are getting made, and all sorts of exciting things are happening. And it really does kind of immerse you in it a little bit as well. And it's a dinosaur game. Who doesn't love that?
It does up the complexity a bit though, because you do have to plan out your route for where you're going, and part of that route is also what worker meeples you need, but you're spending the worker meeples earlier on in kind of the draft phase for the tiles you're putting out. So there are like lots of different things to consider.
Yeah, it's kind of Dinosaur Island plus like 2 more levels added on to it as well, but they're welcome levels. And that is my 55.
My number 55 is Sonora, and Sonora is a combination of a flip and right and dexterity game. It is a flick and right, and both of those are genres that I really like. So it's essentially a little bit like Crokinole as a kind of roll and write game. And you are just flicking these discs into these different sections, and then once everyone's done, you're drawing them out, and there's some great combos as well. But I think we've still really enjoy playing this because we keep getting better and better at aiming.
Yeah, I think that helps. When we first played it, it was like, oh, this is kind of like not a very good crokinole. But as we've gotten better at it, there's really a lot of strategy in it now. And we're kind of like doubling off of each other and knocking people off of bonuses and bouncing off of walls and all sorts of stuff. And the second, like the roll and write part is also interesting.
And it is super fun because if you get it right in the center, you're able to kind of put it wherever you want right away. And that happens so rarely still. So that's still a fun challenge to go for. And that is my number 55.
My number 54 is Explorers of the North Sea. And this is probably my favorite of the North Sea trilogy. I like Raiders as well, but this one lets you actually build out a thing. And I love building out a thing. And in this, you're building a whole ocean of all sorts of islands, and you're sailing around with Vikings, and you're smashing up your ship and sending them off to Valhalla, and you're pillaging, and you're moving animals. And one of the cool things is as you make those islands, you're controlling them. So you gotta have this push of luck thing of, do I make little islands and control lots, or do I like push it and try and make like a whole big country, but I gotta get the right puzzle pieces to finish that country.
And if you're building a big one, then you're kind of inviting others to try and come over as well, because you get points based on who has control of those islands. And so if I can get in on Shawn's, it's not necessarily his. I might end up with control.
Yeah, it's got kind of that like Carcassonne mechanic, which I love in Carcassonne as well. So that is my 54.
My number 54 is Hadara. Hadara is a abstracted civilization game which has a lot of card drafting and set collection. So as you draft your cards, one of the interesting things about it is the cards get cheaper the more you have. So almost every game, I always think I'm just going to really like focus on one type of card because it's going to get so cheap. But every time I end up trying to kind of get more of them because they interact in such different ways as well. You kind of need to get kind of one of each and then build from there.
Yeah, I definitely find myself, the green ones, I think they're meant to be agriculture. You can only have so many cards as you have like points on the green track. And that's the one I think that we're always like, oh crap, we got to get that, like that in economy. But the blue and the red ones are the fun ones that get you like that open up stuff and like let you like visit things.
Yeah, so I always find it super hard to have a lot of one kind, meaning I always have to pay so much for my cards, but those decisions keep it interesting, and that is my number 54.
My number 53 is Wonderland's War. And like an awful lot of people, I am an enormous fan of Alice in Wonderland. So I'm always a little bit interested when there is an Alice in Wonderland game. And this is the best one. And it's great because it's got all of these different segments, but all of them are interesting. So you're moving around this. First, it's the Mad Tea Party where you're drafting cards. And then it's the actual war, which is like a bag building, a little bit like Quacks, but like a very combative Quacks element to it. And you've also got a bit of like an area control-ish thing that's going on as well that's linked to that. And just all of the things are basically simultaneous, and all of them are super engaging. And the characters all play different too, so it's also got the asymmetry. So there's a lot going on here that I like.
And one of the things that I like about it is another thing that you didn't mention, which are the kind of secret goal cards because I like having a bit of a sense of direction and kind of like mini goals to try and go for. And because of that, you are able to do fairly well even if you're not winning a lot of battles.
Yeah, you can just finish a lot of those quests too, which is a great other way. Those points always sneak up on me at the end. And it's got all the Wonderland characters too that you can enlist. There's so much to say about this one. But this is my 53.
My 53 is King Domino, and I'm going with the Origins one. And the reason for that is it comes essentially with the base game King Domino, but with kind of a caveman vibe to it. But it also includes 2 additional modules, each of which ups the complexity just a little bit. So it's great to have the option to do kind of the regular King Domino, which is great. But then if we do want something that's like the next level up, to be able to play that as well.
And it doesn't, when it ups the complexity, it's not like to the moon.
No.
Like it's still very manageable, but it's nice to have that little extra. And the bits in it look really cool too.
Yeah, I love like the woolly mammoth tokens and everything. Those are super fun to add on. And there's volcanoes that explode. So King Domino kind of plus, and that's my number 53.
My number 52 is Fields of Arle, and this is a 2-player specific Uwe Rosenberg farming game, and it's a game I have never won, but I still love it. And it's, even though it's 2-player specific, usually you think those are kind of pared down, but this is a table hog of a game where you're collecting up buildings, you're doing like a huge amount of worker actions, like an almost Feast for Odin amount of worker actions, and you're building your farm and gaining animals, which is my favorite part of it, which is why I always lose, but I'm sure my cow strategy will pay off one day.
Yeah, and I normally also use kind of an animal breeding strategy because I just love animal meeples, but because Shawn really goes for that and usually takes those worker spaces, I have to look for other options, and so far that's proven to be pretty successful.
She's always got all of the good buildings, but I've always got all of the cows, and one day that will win me a game. But that is my 52.
My 52 is Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle, and I just love the Hogwarts world, and this is the best game that we've played that puts you in that world. It's a pretty simple deck builder where you're collecting up characters and items from that world, and then you're fighting Death Eaters and various other bad guys. But you work your way up kind of through the different levels. The first few are very, very easy. But we just have so many inside jokes about the different characters that come out, and we both know the world so well that really makes this game come to life.
I will say, though, so I agree, we had a lot of fun playing through the first campaign, but the expansions are a bit of a mixed bag. Like, the first one's really hard. Some of them are so hard. And then the second one's just really easy. It's like they overcorrect it a little bit. So hopefully they do one more and they kind of find that level in between.
Yeah, but this is one that if I get convinced Shawn to play it with just regular style, I have a lot of fun with. And that's my number 52.
My number 51 is Seven Wonders Duel, and this is my second 2-player specific game in a row, but this one has a much smaller table footprint for sure, and it's not really a pared down version of Seven Wonders, because it does actually have, I think, some more interesting decisions. I would take this one over plain Seven Wonders any day of the week, and Seven Wonders Architects, while it is good, and I thought about it, I still think this one knocks it out, because I just find the system of how the cards are laid out and how you draft them so interesting. And especially when you add Pantheon to the mix, because then that kind of, it stops that thing where like, I know I have to take this and you'll take that and I have to take this and and it's kind of laid out for us. It kind of throws a little bit of a wrench into that and gives you another option too.
I think this is one that I may have missed off of my list. I did have Seven Wonders Architects because we've been playing a lot of that recently, and I do really like it, but you're absolutely right. This is one we've played so much, and it's such a solid kind of strategic 2-player game.
Yeah, this was an early one in our collaborative collection, and it's one that we've probably played this 30, 40 times now, and I still like it, and that is why it is my 51.
My number 51 is Carcassonne, and this is one a lot of people play when they're first getting into the hobby, but we still really like playing it today. I love building out the fields and the farms and the cutthroat competition for cities. I really have to be on my toes around you, because if he can steal a city, he will. So I always try and kind of preempt that. And then we have about 3 or 4 of the expansions added in, which just kind of gives you lots of different little extra options.
Yeah, this is my gateway game. This is the one that first got me into the hobby, and it still just has such a place in my heart. And this is, we always talk about building out. This is like the original building out a big map game.
And we love playing it still, and that's my number 51.
And that is it. That brings us all the way down to 51, which means next time we are starting at 50, and we are in the top half of the countdown. And I cannot believe that we still have not had a section where we've had a game cross over. That is bonkers to me, and I am positive that has got to change next time.
Yeah, by next time there must be at least one that we'll have in the same section. But thank you so much for watching. Have you played any of the games we talked about? If so, please let us know your thoughts in the comments. Please like, subscribe, all of that helps us out, and hopefully we'll see you for the next one.